Well, this is the Call Flo Show, and we have some very special guests joining us. We have Kyle and Lydia from the Yeatman Group. Guys, how you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Great. Glad to be back.
Yes, glad to see you back. It's been. You were on the original episode, Kyle,
Yeah.
and then we had Lydia
The
on.
duo
For
is back.
Yeah, nice. The dynamic duo.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Well, what's been new in the world of real estate for you guys?
Well, spring is sprung.
That's right.
So we're through the winter months, and then everybody's got listing fever now. Everybody wants to get their home on the market, and there's a lot of activity going on out there.
Yeah, it's good
Absolutely.
stuff.
Do you notice like a dry spell in the winter months, kind of like, November, December? Are people kind of just like staying in? They're not wanting to sell their homes or like list them? Is that like pretty common?
Well, like aesthetically speaking, your home looks better in the spring
True.
than in the wintertime. So
Yeah.
you think you're okay. In the springtime, I'm going to have a nice green yard. My flower beds are looking nicer.
That is true. Yeah, it's better for photography.
Aesthetically, your home looks better in the spring than
Yeah.
in the wintertime. So people that's why it's the spring market, fall market.
Interesting.
And usually when the weather changes, people are also, there's change in other areas of their life. Like you look at even retail stores, like of course they're busier around when the seasons change.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's the same
Principle, I
concept
guess you
and
can
same
say.
principle in real
They
estate.
say more homes sell in the spring market. I have a couple theories on that, though. There are also more homes listed
Yeah.
in the spring market, and there's also more competition in the spring market. So
Interesting.
it just kind of all depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
Did you guys have any topics?
picked out? Yes, we did.
Yeah,
So Kyle and I talked about just busting some of the common real estate myths.
Yeah.
And so we put together a few, and I'm sure we'll think of more as we continue this conversation. But we've got 4 or 5 really good ones picked out. Do you want me to start with the first one?
Sure, and I think the reason we wanted to do this is, part of the whole reason for this little show that we're trying to do
Absolutely.
is to educate people on
Yeah,
real estate.
100%.
And like Lydia said, there's a lot of myths out there that some have a little bit of truth and some have absolutely none, and trying to bust as many of those as we can today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of like almost make the buyer actually feel more comfortable like in this
Buyers and
headspace.
sellers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And real estate's constantly changing. So there's
Sure.
new programs and things that come out. And
I got to say, sorry to interrupt. I was totally blown away about the different like things about double wides and like those
yeah?
mobile homes.
We
I was
got
like,
into
I
that
had
last
no
time.
idea that there's so many like, different rules
yes.
applied to those homes versus like just a stick built.
Yeah.
That's incredible. But,
Yeah.
all right. Well, if you guys want to go into that'd be
Sounds
great.
good. Yeah, our first one, and we can talk a little bit more about, and I did touch on some of the different programs that are available last time when we talked, but a common myth is that you'd need 20% down to purchase a home. So there's many different types of financing when you go and you look into buying a home. We talked a little bit about this last time, but USDA is 100% financing. So that means no down payment, and you still have your closing costs, but it's 0% down. So there's USDA, which is specifically for rural areas, and then FHA, which is 3.5% down, and then conventional too. Like even if you get a conventional loan, you don't necessarily have to put 20% down.
Yeah.
So if you're a first-time home buyer and you have a conventional loan, you can put as little as 3-4% down. And it's your first home. So there's so many different things available now, and like grant funds and
VA.
Yeah, VA.
If you have
financing.
service in your history. Or also, a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to buy now because the rates are too high, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of ways to get the rates down, even if it's temporarily. Like
Yeah.
we would all agree that major interest rate changes tend to happen every 3 years, worst case every 5, and absolute worst case every 7.
Yeah.
Well, there's loan programs out there called ARMs, where you can actually buy the rate down in the short term, and it'll be 1 year at this rate, another year at this rate, and then the third year it caps.
Okay.
So there's ways that you can get into a home now at a lower interest rate that may be on market that people rarely know about as
Yeah.
well.
So
Yeah.
you can buy down that rate.
Sure.
And something that I've worked with my buyers doing this is, so let's say, a home has been on the market for 90 days. Seller's usually more motivated, and you can actually go in and ask and the house doesn't have to sit for you to do this, but usually the seller's more motivated and willing to work with you when you do this, but you can ask for a credit from the seller. So you can ask for the seller to cover your closing costs, and part of what you can use that money for is buying down your rate.
Yeah.
So I've had clients do that before, and I've done it numerous times where you can end up buying down your rate, lowering that monthly payment. And so there's ways to get creative with it for sure. And it's definitely a common myth. Like I was talking to someone not too long ago and they're like, yeah, a friend of mine, he's got to be able to have that 20% down. I was like, well, actually, no. And if he's a first time home buyer, there's grants out there. I just had someone close on a property the other day, and first time home buyer, she was able to qualify for $15,000.
Wow.
In closing cost assistance. So she actually ended up walking away from that deal getting money back. Like she got a check.
That is amazing.
Like you bought a house and you got a check back. How cool is that?
That's pretty incredible.
So there's grant funds available, but you just have to, you need to be working with people. If she wouldn't have known about that if I hadn't gotten her in touch with the right lender.
Yeah.
And just informed her about there are other options out there.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely a common myth that there's one way to do it. And that's just not the case.
And it's key to work with an agent that has enough experience to know these programs are out there.
Yeah.
Where to get the grants? What do you have to do to qualify for them? There's income limits on a lot of these loan programs. And knowing somebody that can help you navigate either that road or also connect you with a lender who's the expert in those areas. And speaking of that, another big myth is that you have to have perfect credit in order to buy a home, and that's very untrue.
Yeah.
There's programs. Obviously, you get a better interest rate and better terms the better the credit that you have. But there's always a way, or almost always a way, to get a loan. There's credit programs down there that go into the mid fives, and so people that have had a rough circumstance or a bad luck run, there's still ways that you don't have to wait 10 years to get your credit back perfect.
Yeah.
You can get in a home now and gain that appreciation along the way. Is usually still a better option, even at a higher interest rate than renting.
Also, it might be something simple that, let's say your credit is affected by something simple, like it's a matter of fixing that. So there's been numerous times where I've connected a buyer to a lender and they're like, hey, this person needs some credit repair, but this is, a 90-day. We can resolve this in 90 days. And my lender then gets them in touch with a credit repair specialist to get that off their credit. So sometimes it's just people don't even realize. They're like, oh, I didn't know that was affecting my credit like that. Like, okay, so we get it resolved. And then, now their credit is back up in 90 days and they're ready to buy. So someone might not be at a place now, but it's getting in touch with the people who can help you.
Absolutely.
So
there's always a way to work around issues like that.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's a longer fix, but sometimes it's simple.
Yeah.
And so there's a credit repair specialist that works with one of the lenders that I work with that has referred numerous clients of mine. And sometimes it's just a simple fix. And no one ever explained this to me. Like we would have done this. We didn't even know this was negatively affecting us. So.
Whereas like when your refrigerator breaks down, or your car breaks down, some people know how to fix it, but most people don't, right? And you go to a specialist, and buying a home is no different. Not only do you need an agent that knows what they're doing, but usually a lender that knows what they're doing helps a lot. But then sometimes there needs to be more heavy lifting, right? And that's when you bring in a credit repair specialist who's trained and has contacts at the credit bureaus and know if you do this happens, or this takes this long to happen.
Sure.
And it's a method to the madness.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to harp back on that other point about the 20% though. Where did that stem from? Was that like because I feel like everything comes from something. So at some point, was that like a
typical
thing?
conventional loan that most people know about is 20% down.
Okay.
The best rates start at 20% down.
And when you put 20% down, then you don't have to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance. So, which is you would pay if you're under 20%.
Yeah.
So, and if you can put 20% down, that's great. But not everyone can afford to do that in this market. So just letting people know that there are other options. So,
and it's usually better to not wait. Like if you're like, well, I want to buy a home, but I only have 10%. You'd be better off to buy now and ride the equity of that home's appreciation than it would be to wait however long it would be to save the 20%.
Yeah.
So I think the huge myth is people are maybe too conservative, ironically, in the saving for a home when they should have bought sooner.
Yeah.
And they would have been able to take the equity out to get the 20% and get PMI off later, which is probably a whole nother show in up to itself.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of financial tools and way to do it, and we're not pretending to be accountants, but we can give people and point them in the right direction and really kind of get them to the experts that they need.
Sure, absolutely. Wow. Okay. Well, that is very informative, I must say.
Should we move on to the next point?
Yeah, I think one that I have is that that it's better to rent now than it is to buy, right? And I don't think that's hardly ever the case. And the reason for that is there's a shortage of housing in general, in the Farmville area, in our metro area, just in Virginia, in the country in general. And whenever there's a shortage of housing, there's also a shortage of rentals. And so rental rates are way up right now. And so typically if you're paying, let's say $1,500 in rent, or you own and your mortgage is $1,500, you're actually paying a lot less money if you own. And the reason for that is your money is working for you. So when you're renting, your money's working for somebody else. You're working for the person you're renting from. You're helping their financial position. If you own, not only is that home gaining appreciation and equity over time, but you're also getting interest rate deductions for the money that you're paying. So you're kind of winning on both sides. In addition to that, if you do any remodel and renovations, which I know is one of your topics, that's why I kind of wanted to lead with this one. But if you're doing any remodels or renovations, you actually get the benefit of that. If you're in a rental and you decide to paint the whole home, you know,
Who's
it
getting the
feels
benefit of
good,
that?
it's
Not
great,
you.
but the landlord is the one that's really winning there. And so again, in almost any way you look at it, you're better off to purchase now, even if you're not in the best financial position, than renting. And everybody has to rent at some point, right? But the goal is to get back into an ownership situation as soon as you can.
Renting is a rite of passage, I like to say. But like it is nice to be thinking about the future and like owning actual property and having that assets. For sure.
And the thing about rent is that it goes up.
Yes. And it never
The only
stops.
time your mortgage payment would change is if you're, you know, if you have a locked interest rate, the only time it's going to change is if you refinance. So your rent, it's not going to stay the same for the next 30 years.
And we often hear too that people say, well, I'm going to wait. Interest rates are high now, right? They're 6.5% or whatever. I'm going to wait till they get back down into the 5s. Well, that sounds like a great strategy, but really you're costing yourself more money there. The right time to buy is always now. Typical that a realtor would say that, right? But it really is true, because the average over the last 10 years is homes are appreciating 6 to 7% every year. And so versus waiting for that 1% that you could deduct anyway, you're going to pay a higher price when you decide to buy. And so usually it's better, not always, but usually it's better to buy now versus waiting.
And then piggybacking off of that, we were talking about renovations. And a common myth will be like, well, I need to renovate this, this, and this before selling. There are certain things that you will always get a return on your investment for. So like, you know, if you focus on the kitchen, bathroom areas, a fresh coat of paint can do wonders. But honestly, like if you are, like I met with someone this past week, the house was built in the late 2000s and very, very well taken care of. So, I mean, the bathrooms, the kitchen, everything was very, very well taken care of. And they were considering making certain repairs, certain updates to the home. And I just sat down, I was like, just a candid conversation with you. Like, you're not going to get your money back if you do this, this, and this. Because the home is in perfect condition. It's been so well taken care of. You are going to get a better return on your investment if we price the home as it is now. There's a few things that I recommended as opposed to making these big repairs. Now, I've also been in the situation where I've met with a seller. I'm like, hey, this is needed. And this is like a $17,000 fix. But you are going to get your money back and more. You're going to get a greater return on your investment. So it's really a case-by-case basis. And if someone's curious, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to be focusing on? Talk to a realtor. Like, call me.
That's a key point, is make sure you talk to, if you're thinking about selling, talk to an agent first.
Before you jump in and decide to renovate, do this big renovation project. Oftentimes, especially when you have an older home, everyone's going to have a different idea on what they want. So as long as it's well maintained, clean, taken care of, and it's not, it's not a glaring defect, like talk to someone, figure out what's going to be your greatest return on your investment. Even down to like paint colors. So if you're thinking about painting the whole house, maybe like figure out, don't paint it like coral. I don't know. Like there's certain paint colors that are going to be more attractive. And so talk to someone who's familiar with the things that are going to get you the greatest return on your
Sure
investment
thing. Sure
before
thing.
just jumping into it.
That's a good point.
So.
I did want to ask you if you have some examples. I think that would be really great. But like, what is a beneficial remodel? Fixing something, repairing something that's actually going to increase the value versus something that's not going to improve the value at all. Like, is there like a
Well, I think, like Lydia said, it's case by case basis. So it's hard to give a blanket statement.
Okay.
But generally, especially if you have pets,
Yeah.
replacing carpet that's aged, that's the number one thing people notice.
Yeah. Interesting.
Paint is usually the
Paint
number
goes
one
so far.
Yeah.
Like a fresh coat of paint does wonders. Power washing.
thing. Yeah, think about like if you
fresh
have a car
landscaping.
that's
Sure.
dirty and you wash it. That's the equivalent of painting a house.
Okay.
And so things that we don't recommend jumping right into are don't go immediately trying to replace your countertops.
Sure.
Don't go immediately to ripping out your whole kitchen cabinets. You could maybe paint those cabinets and give the kitchen a whole nother look.
Yeah.
But typically where you really get the bang for your buck is your kitchen and your bathrooms. But again, a lot of styles come around, right?
Sure.
And so depending on how old or outdated the bathroom might be, it might actually be in style again. And so I think it's very, very important to consult an expert that does this daily.
Sure.
That's up on what's in right now, and kind of guide you along the way before you waste a lot of money that, like Lydia said, that you can't get back.
Yeah. And then if you make those costly updates, now it's you have to net even more on your home. You have to get, now your number just jumped up.
Yeah.
However much you're spending, it jumped up that amount, and now you're more pressured to get a higher number on your home.
Yeah.
So there are certain repairs, and like we said, it is a case by case basis. So that's something that I meet with homeowners very often about, is walking through the home and figuring out, okay, what's going to get the greatest return on my investment. Paint is usually the most for the cost of it, for what it does, it is like getting your car detailed.
Yeah.
It does wonders, fresh landscaping.
Nobody's ever going to complain about power washing and mulch.
Yes, I know.
Almost every house that we list needs a power wash and mulch. Even if you just did it a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Like, it makes a world of difference.
Deep clean the windows. People are looking at the windows.
Vacuum all the stink bugs that died.
And you'd be surprised, literally just having a clean house.
Yeah.
Like having it be clean.
Yeah.
Does wonders. And if that means you need to hire, pay someone $400 to come in, $500 to come in and detail your house, do it. It does. Yeah. It does wonders. Absolutely.
What a lot of people don't talk about too is it's very important is decluttering. Right?
Yeah.
That's almost worse than the home needing updating is people just have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Part of the reason a lot of people want to move is because they're outgrowing the space that they're in,
Sure.
right? And so it's a tough spot to be in, but usually you have to remove enough stuff almost till you're sad, and that's probably just right? Because you want people to be looking at your home, not your stuff.
Exactly.
If they're looking at their stuff, they don't get to see the home.
Sure.
And so I think that's a big.
And it gives them like a warped sense of what the home actually is, versus like if the stuff is removed, it may seem more open and like nice, versus having like a bunch of old like board games stacked up on a shelf.
And that's the hardest part of moving. I think that's probably the most emotional part and all that.
Sure.
Is getting all that stuff packed up and out of the way, but you got to move it anyway. Right. If you sell, you're gonna have to move it anyway. So.
Yeah. And not everyone can look at a space that, so let's say, they're looking at your living room with all of your stuff packed up in the living room. Like, not everyone can look at a space and visualize what they want. And so they get distracted by the stuff. And so minimizing is huge when it comes to, if you're living in the home, trying to get rid of the loud paint colors and the big pieces of furniture. Minimize. Like, it will not hurt you. Trust me, they'll make the space feel bigger, and people can focus on the features of the home rather than just the stuff that's in the room. So definitely declutter, depersonalization. So those are
less stuff, the more the home can usually sell for.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Conversations that we have with sellers early on. Okay, let's tuck this away in the drawer. So no, definitely. And then we did touch on owning versus renting. And I talked to someone. I had a homeowner close not too long ago, and she was debating, okay, is it better for me to buy? Is it better for me to rent? And it came down to like, she knew what she was going to be paying in rent.
Yeah.
And she knew what she was going to be paying in regards to a mortgage payment for this house, and the rent would have been more. Yeah. And that's what's crazy, is because there's a shortage. Rent is just insane right now. I
can verify that.
Yeah. So by the time we did the math, and of course, you have you're paying you, and some rent includes utilities, but you're also taking, if you look at your rent, none of that money is going back to you. At least in a mortgage payment, it's like you're taking some out of your right pocket and putting some back into your left. Like you're retaining some of that, and you're building equity. So it's that conversation that we had was eye-opening for her. Oh, for sure. What was our next one?
I mean, that's about all that I have as far as myths
go. The financing was a big one. Talking about the different loan programs.
One that we had was that not all homes that are for sale are out on the open market. And so another reason to have a great agent or work with an agent that you trust is somebody that's plugged into the community and knows people that maybe are thinking about moving in 6 months, or they don't really want to list their home, but for the right number they would sell their home. And knowing people that know people locally can get you access to inventory that might not be on the open market. And you're seeing more and more of this. You're hearing it in the media. Zillow just came out and made a big stance about what they thought about off-market listings, but they're always going to exist at some level or another. And so I think working with an agent that's very plugged into the market is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we talked about that a little bit last time with the, because occasionally I will do that, and it all boils down to what the goal of the seller is.
Sure.
So if if they're prioritizing, maybe they don't want to deal with showings, and they want a quick close, and they want to be able to work exclusively with you. Like, there's all sorts of reasons why a seller may want to not go on the open market, privacy reasons. There's all sorts of things. So it all boils down to what the goals of the seller, what their goals are. And sometimes that means the best case scenario would be facilitating an off-market deal with them. So we've both been in that position many times. And like I said, it's quite often that my smoothest deals are the ones that I facilitate both sides. But no, that's connecting with a local expert. We talked about this last time. Can make or break a deal. And you can be aware of deals that you wouldn't otherwise have known about when you're working with.
And also there are other ways that could benefit too. Like we work with a lot of home builders, right? And so knowing what inventory specs that they're getting ready to build, or what lots they have available that something can be built. Your average agent's not going to know those type of things if they don't work a lot in new construction. So I think that's another angle that an agent that's very connected can help with.
All right. Well, this has been amazing, guys. Another stellar drop-in. We appreciate you guys coming by and letting us know and busting those myths of real estate. It's very important to get those out there. Did you want to maybe kind of like let people know what the next appearance might look like?
Oh, we have so many good ones. We talked about bringing on some guests.
Yes.
Yeah. I think at some point we're going to bring in a lender, talk about different loan programs.
And get an expert to speak on these.
We'll probably try to bring in maybe a home inspector to talk about some of the things that are commonly found in home inspections and how to prevent them maintenance-wise. So we'll talk about it, and we'll see what we can bring. We'll keep people on their toes.
That's right.
Really looking forward to it, guys. This sounds very exciting. All right, Kyle, Lydia, thank you guys so much for coming by.